Hello and welcome to Kakaaki, the African Voice on Africa Independent Television, AIT. I am Adora Sydney Jack. And of course, today, 2026, May 17th, the year's running fast. Well, 2027, though, may seem like a long way off, but in the Nigerian political landscape, the year is just a breath away from the shadows of the next elections. Already a front burner, somehow overshadowing the present realities in the polity. Now, with politicians already at the top of their game, defecting, re-strategizing, with some gaining grounds, while others losing their strongholds to forces behind or beyond their control, the average Nigerian is left bewildered in the midst of it all, with some asking what is really happening to democracy in Nigeria. Now, many political watchers are worried about the widening gap between the electorate, who are duty-bound to decide the fate of democracy, and the political parties designed as vehicles to bring their aspirations to life, as voter apathy, distrust of political actors, and a growing belief that gatekeeping institutions perhaps may have been compromised beyond redemption. This raises pertinent questions on where Nigeria's democracy is heading and whether the 2027 election will be a mere transaction or a vehicle for the socio-economic transformation Nigerians are yearning for. Now, joining us to perhaps bring some insight to these and many more questions that we've just raised, we'll be joined on the show this Tuesday, and we have a guest joining us, a civil rights activist, Victor Temba, a public affairs analyst, Ambassador Asukwo Michael. Ambassador Asukwo is also a UN Peace Ambassador. Now, away from politics, we move to security, which is also still part of politics, by the way, where following the recent escalation of insecurity in Ondo State, security agencies in the state on Monday embarked on a show of force in Akure, warning criminals to stay away from the state. Now, agencies involved in the show of force include the police, the army, Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, and Department of State Security, DSS, as well as the Ondo State Security Network Agency, otherwise known as the Amotekun Corps. Now, with the operation led by the Commissioner of Police Adebowale Lawal, Amotekun Commander Detunji Adeleye, and Commanding Officer of 323 Artillery Brigade, the security chiefs in the state, stated that the show of force would send a signal to criminals that there is no room for them to operate in the state. The Understate Police Command used the opportunity to dismiss reports that bandits were arrested at the Akure airport, contradicting any earlier claim by the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria that there were suspects that were apprehended around the airport perimeter. Now, well, Ondo is indeed one of the states where all eyes definitely are on in the fight to keep terrorists and bandits at bay and other violent criminals away as well. Now, how big is this tax, one would ask? Now, aside from that show of force, what other plans do the security agencies in the state have to fight insecurity? These are some of the questions perhaps we shall be putting forward to the State Police Commissioner, Adebowale Lawal, later on in the show when he joins us to discuss this and bring us to bear and up to speed with what the plans are and, of course, what the overview and outcomes are, whether there were really bandits around the airport perimeter or not. Now, remember that you can be part of the program, of course, by sending your views and comments to all our social media handles on Facebook, X, Instagram, and, of course, YouTube at AIT Live. And, of course, you can always stay up to date with the latest news from around the world. But in the meantime, let's take you around the world. First up, from our news desk on Kakaaki World News. To stay with us. Hello and welcome. This is Kakaaki World News. If you just come in, you're welcome. Well, the Israeli military said on Monday that it struck more Hezbollah infrastructure in Beirut, Lebanon's capital. A powerful strike also hit Beirut's southern suburbs moments before the announcement came.
Israeli military forces struck southern Beirut early Monday, targeting Hezbollah infrastructure, with powerful explosions reported in the city's southern suburbs, including Haret Hurek and Boj al-Brajneh, producing large plumes of smoke and fire visible across the skyline. The strikes follow a series of retaliatory attacks after Hezbollah fired rockets into northern Israel, escalating the ongoing conflict. The Israeli military reported hitting at least 10 Hezbollah infrastructures within 30 minutes, including the headquarters of its elite Radwan unit. The Israeli army said it had issued evacuation orders for almost the entirety of those neighborhoods in Beirut, as well as southern Lebanon, displacing over 800,000 people. A strike in a district in the southern city of Tyre killed 3 people and wounded 3 others on Sunday, according to Lebanon's health ministry. Another strike in the Marja Yons district killed 2 people and wounded 4 others. Israeli strikes have killed 850 people in Lebanon, including 107 children and 66 women since the conflict between Hezbollah and Israel reignited on the 2nd of March after Israel, the ministry said Hezbollah fired a salvo of rockets toward northern, adding that it is also wounding 26 people. Excavators in the southern suburbs of Beirut have started clearing debris after the strikes. Families have taken shelter in Beirut stadiums and schools as the effects of the U.S.-Israel's war on Iran are felt across the region.
Now, a huge black thick plume of smoke billowed up from Dubai Airport on Monday after a drone hit one of the fuel tanks. The airport has repeatedly been targeted by Iranian drones, causing interruptions to air travel. It has also been shut down for several days since the start of the war between U.S., Israel, and Iran on February 28. Now, the United Arab Emirates Defense Ministry says forces were intercepting Iranian missiles and drones Monday morning, hours after a drone strike sparked a fire at Dubai's main airport. Emirates says it's in its latest update that all its flights there remain suspended until further notice. The airline says it is working with authorities to restart operations when possible, as it urged passengers not to travel to the airport. Dubai International Airport is the world's busiest airport for international travel and a key hub linking east-west flights around the world. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has said he did not know if he wanted to make a deal with Iran to end the war. Now, speaking aboard Air Force One while flying back to Washington from Florida, Trump outlined requirements for a potential deal.
It comes as President Trump demanded about 7 countries to send warships to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. His appeals have so far brought no commitments as oil prices soared during the war. Separately, Trump defended the use of a photo of a dignified transfer in fundraising. The president declined to name the countries heavily reliant on Middle East crude that the administration is negotiating with to join a coalition to police the waterway where about 1/5 of the world's traded oil normally flows. The U.S. president sidestepped questions about oil futures. He didn't directly answer whether his administration is talking about selling oil futures as a way to cap surging oil prices. Trump's Interior Secretary Dick Burgum told reporters during the weekend that the administration has talked about the strategy. Trump also said a fatal strike on school in Iran is being investigated. The deadly missile strike on an elementary school in the opening hours of the conflict killed more than 165 people, many of them children. Recent satellite images, expert analysis, and public information released by the U.S. military all suggested it was likely a U.S. strike.
Now, EU's foreign policy chief, Kakaaki, said on Monday that the European Union will look at options to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Now, Kallas said that EU could expand its upsides naval mission to protect shipping in the Red Sea up into the Persian Gulf, or they could form a coalition of the willing with member nations contributing military capacity on an ad hoc basis.
Of course, it's important that the attention on the Middle East does not take away the attention from Ukraine, that the attention does not fizzle out there. We see the easing of sanctions on oil on Russia by U.S. is a dangerous precedent, because right now we need them to have less money for waging the war than more. And of course, the Strait of Hormuz being closed is also to the benefit of Russia to fund this war. So we need to do definitely more on this.
It comes as EU Foreign Affairs Minister met in Brussels to discuss the situation in Ukraine and in the Middle East. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump said he has demanded about 7 countries send warships to keep the Strait of Hormuz open as Iranian strikes continue to rain down on Gulf countries Monday. Iran has said the strait is open to all except the United States and its allies. Now, Japan on Monday began releasing its oil reserves worth about 45 days to cope with supply shortages and rising prices as the U.S.-Israel war with Iran continues. Now, Japan imports more than 19% of its crude oil from the Middle East.
Monday's release began with a 15-day worth of private sector reserves, followed by a month's worth of state-held oil, totaling about 80 million barrels, or about 1/5 of Japan's domestic oil reserves. Most of it comes through the Strait of Hormuz, and its virtual closure is expected to start impacting Japan's oil supply within weeks. Prime Minister Kakaaki announced the release plan last week. Japanese government staff spokesperson Minoru Kihara also told the reporters Monday that no decision had been made to send self-defense forces. Following U.S. President Donald Trump's call for countries including Japan to send ships to help protect the Strait of Hormuz, talking at the parliament, Kakaaki said her government has not heard anything from Washington. Defense Minister Shinjiro Kozumi said he has no plans to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz under the current safety conditions.
Now, 2 boats carrying 21 people capsized Monday off a controversial relocation site for a U.S. military base off Japan's southern island of Okinawa. Now, officials said the accident off Henoko, Japan, threw all into the water and left 2 dead.
The Japan Coast Guard said 18 of them were students of a Kyoto High School on 2 boats, 10 on the boat Heimaru and 8 on the smaller boat Fukutsu, to observe the Henoko area as part of their peace education program. Officials said Coast Guard rescuers pulled all 21 people out of the water, but the 17-year-old female student and the captain of Fukutsu were later pronounced dead. 2 people were injured, but their conditions are not life-threatening. Coast Guard officials said the cause of the accident is under investigation. The boats were about a kilometer east of Henoko when they capsized. A wave advisory was in place during the accident, but the water was not very rough and there was no sign the boats collided, officials said. Persistent protests and lawsuits between Okinawa and Tokyo have held up the relocation plan of the U.S. Marine Corps Air Station Futema from a crowded neighborhood on the island for nearly 30 years.
Rescued crew members from a Thai cargo ship that was struck and set ablaze near the Strait of Hormuz arrived in Bangkok from Oman on Monday. Now, 3 crew members from the Mayuri Nari ship remain missing after the vessel was hit by a projectile just north of Oman last week. Thai officials said they are in close coordination with Iranian and Omani authorities as search and rescue efforts continue. The 20 crew members who returned to Bangkok were reported to be in good health and good spirits. After landing at Suvarnabhumi International Airport, the crew was escorted by officials to a waiting bus and did not speak to the media. Now to Kenya. Further 4 people have died in Kenya after heavy rain caused widespread flooding, taking the number to have died in the past week to at least 66. The capital, Nairobi, was hit by more heavy rain overnight. Although new deaths were reported, 11 people were rescued after a minibus taxi, known locally as a matatu, got stuck as water rose in Nairobi, while 2 children were saved from a flooded house.
According to Kenya Red Cross, heavy rainfall over the past week has triggered flash floods as rivers have burst their banks, flooding homes and damaging roads, power and water lines. Some roads have been closed after bridges were damaged in Nairobi, while some schools were also flooded after Saturday's downpour. The Interior Ministry warned on Sunday that different parts of the country were continuing to experience heavy rains, increasing the risk of flooding. Authorities have urged residents in low-lying areas to move to safer ground, and more than 2,000 people have had to leave their homes to seek shelter. Police say search and rescue operations are continuing following the torrential rain and subsequent devastating flooding affecting various parts of the country. Half of those killed, 33, have been in Nairobi, where poor drainage has been a major factor, along with the obstruction of rivers and waterways caused by unregulated development. President William Ruto on Sunday said authorities were working to clear blocked drainage systems, but residents say they had seen no one, and the Parklands Residents Association had cleared up the debris themselves. Ruto also said emergency food supplies and medical assistance were being delivered to those affected. The flooding has not just affected Kenya. More than 100 people have been killed in neighboring Ethiopia following floods and landslides in the south of the country. Many factors contribute to flooding, but a warming atmosphere caused by climate change makes extreme rainfall more likely. Analysts say the world has already warmed by about 1.1 centigrade since the industrial era began, and temperatures will keep rising unless government around the world takes steps to cut the emissions.
Now, as 2025 drew to a close, Abuja and Washington solidified a high-stakes military partnership designed to crush the insurgency ravaging Nigeria's hinterlands. But this alliance comes at a volatile time, with the U.S. currently in a high-stake military conflict with Iran, America already touching down on Nigerian soil.
Nigeria's rapidly United States. From being slammed with the talk of a country of particular concern over alleged Christian genocide, to Tomahawk missiles landing in Sokoto State, and U.S. military trainers arriving in Nigeria's northeast state of Borno, Nigeria and the U.S. seem to have forged a new dimension of mutual understanding, even though relations remain tense. Washington says it is supporting Nigeria's military efforts, but Nigerian authorities insist these are intelligence advisors rather than combat troops. The lines are blurring. The renewed military and security pact comes under the framework of the joint working group agreed to by both nations late last year to rout regional terrorists. But despite the U.S. forces being on ground for some weeks now, Nigeria is experiencing a resurgence in extremist attacks with over 60 Nigerian soldiers killed by insurgents in the last 1 month. But questions remain. For instance, who is footing the bill for the hardware and the missiles used in the Christian Day strikes? And who pays for the U.S. military presence in Nigeria?
We should also look at things that way, and not always from the point of view that, oh, America is coming here to help us.
Analysts think that Washington simply wants a foothold. The U.S. brings unrivaled surveillance capabilities, but the presence of over 200 military personnel, regardless of the, quote, non-combat label, speaks volumes. One retired intelligence officer recalls that back in 2001, the U.S. requested to use the Sambisa forest as a base. The Obasanjo administration said no. Analysts now wonder if that request had been granted. Would Boko Haram have ever been allowed to metastasize across the north?
If in the process of achieving their own objectives, we inject our own interests and get them, like using aspects of American technology, aspects of American intelligence provision and so on, to solve part of our security problems in Nigeria, that's a plus.
Yet, the diplomacy remains one-sided. Despite opening its doors to the U.S. military, Nigeria still faces restrictive visa policies and country of concern labels. For many, it appears Nigeria is providing the ground while Washington holds the remote, leaving many to ask if Abuja is holding the short end of the strategic stick. Shola Chayesimi, AIT News, Abuja.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will depart Abuja Tuesday for the two-day state visit to the United Kingdom. Now, this visit, which commences on Wednesday, will see the signing of a $746 million financing deal between UK Export Finance and the Nigerian Ports Authority to support the refurbishment of Lagos Port Complex and Tinkan Island ports in Lagos. This is among several other bilateral deals expected to be sealed. But this is according to a statement from the Aso Rock Villa. President Tinubu will be accompanied by his wife, Remi, the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, Attorney General Lateef Fagbemi, Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, Minister of Defense, retired General Christopher Musa, National Security Advisor Malam Nuhu Ribadu, and the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ambassador Mohammed Mohammed, among others. This marks the first time in 37 years that a Nigerian leader will be invited to the UK on a state visit. A state banquet will also be held in President Tinubu's honor by the British monarch, King Charles, and he will hold talks with Prime Minister Keir Starmer and also interact with the Nigerian diaspora in the UK. Well, that's the world news on Kakaaki. The African Voice. Up next is Kakaaki Business. Let's take it away.
Business. I am Olamide Ario. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said on Monday that the UK is working with allies on a collective plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and restore freedom of navigation in the Middle East, but warned the task will not be easy. Starmer told reporters that reopening the strait is necessary to ensure stability in the oil market. The UK is coordinating with European partners and other allies to develop a viable plan to restore freedom of navigation in the region as quickly as possible to ease the economic impact. Starmer said efforts to reopen the straits will not be carried out as a NATO mission, but rather through a broader coalition of partners. Starmer said the UK will not be drawn into the wider Iran war and will keep working towards a swift resolution. He added that when the fighting stops, some sort of negotiated agreement with Iran will be needed. The body that advises the world's central banks has urged policymakers not to overreact to the Iran crisis-driven spike in global energy prices, calling it a textbook case of when to look through a shock, especially if it proves temporary. This month's 40% surge in oil prices, near 60% leap in wholesale gas prices, have evoked comparison to 2022, when Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the post-COVID reopening of the global economy sent inflation rates soaring. Leading central banks, including the U.S. Federal Reserve and European Central Bank, raised interest rates to their highest levels in decades, but were criticized for reacting too slowly after mistakenly judging the impact would be transitory. For decades, Nigeria's housing and construction industry has largely been dominated by men. But today, more women are stepping forward not just to participate, but to lead, build wealth, and influence key decisions shaping the built environment. That call for greater inclusion took center stage at the Conference of Africa Women in Housing and Construction Industry held in Abuja. The conference themed Work, Wealth, and Worth, redefining work, building wealth and elevating wealth in Africa's built environment focused on creating opportunities for women across the housing and construction value chain.
Greater access to finance, especially for the women in the built environment, and also putting them on leadership positions. Most times, what you see in this built environment, especially the ministries, is more of men. Women can also lead. They can also be up there and still make it work for everyone. You know, so they have a right to be placed at that leadership position when it comes to the built environment. And we should not be, put aside or sidelined that, most of men know. We want to also be there, out there as leaders in the built environment.
Because for long, women's work in and around the housing sector has been invisible. And I think I heard the last speaker also mention that. Women manage homes, but are rarely counted as homeowners. They contribute to household income, but are often excluded from mortgage systems. They build communities, but are seldom at the table where housing policies are made.
Delivering the goodwill message, the Permanent Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, Shuaibu Bagore, acknowledged that although the sector remains largely male-dominated, women are increasingly making meaningful contributions and should be supported through enabling policies.
You compete admirably, sometimes even excel beyond what the men are doing. So the concept that it's male-dominated is illusionary because excellence is what matters. It's not the numbers. From my perspective, I see that they're doing very fine. The opportunities are open to them and they're grabbing it. They're moving ahead with it.
Support for women-led enterprises across construction materials, real estate development and housing services. While women own homes and businesses, households are stronger, communities are more stable, and economies grow more inclusively.
The event brought together architects, developers, policymakers, and other stakeholders to exchange ideas, build partnerships, and expand opportunities for women in Africa's built environment. Fiscal policy analysts are raising fresh concerns over Nigeria's budget management process, warning that repeated extensions and overlapping fiscal cycles could undermine transparency, fiscal discipline, and public service delivery. Speaking at a policy briefing, the Deputy Country Director of Budget, Bayala Kwaga, says persistent violations of existing budget laws and weak fiscal projections are creating credibility challenges for the government.
Budget says Nigeria's legally recognized 12-month fiscal cycle is increasingly being stretched as successive administrations extend capital budget implementation beyond the statutory deadline. The civic organization notes that the practice has created overlapping budget, delayed implementation reports, and growing difficulty in tracking government spending.
We want to make a case for a harmonization of the budget calendar. There is legislation to the effect that Nigeria operates a 12-month fiscal year. So these constant, overlaps, these constant pushes are a violation of existing law.
Budget also raises concerns over revenue declarations by the government agencies that often claims to have exceeded targets, even as capital budget releases remains unclear. According to the group, tracking the federal government's actual fiscal position has become difficult due to the absence of clear and consolidated financial disclosures.
Tracking is difficult because there is no conclusive statement on what the federal government's financial position is as regards the 2025 fiscal year.
The organization further observed that the medium-term expenditure framework, the document meant to guide the national budget, is frequently submitted too close to the appropriation bill, contrary to the provision of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. It warns that unrealistic revenue projection and frequent supplementary budget are expanding fiscal deficit and increasing Nigeria's borrowing exposure.
Now, this document is meant to be passed by resolution before the appropriation bill is to be presented to the National Assembly. Unfortunately, the medium-term expenditure framework was presented 2 days before the appropriation bill was submitted to the National Assembly. Again, this is a violation of existing laws in the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
Budget is therefore calling for what it described as a fiscal reset, urging strict adherence to budget laws, stronger oversight by the National Assembly, and greater transparency in budget implementation reports. The group adds that improving fiscal discipline and enforcing penalties for violations will help strengthen accountability and restore public confidence in government spending. Landry Babalola, AIT News, Abuja.
And concerns are mounting over Nigeria's proposed 2026 agriculture budget after several farmers' groups and civil society organizations raised questions about what they describe as ambiguous, unclear, and in some cases creatively imaginative budget lines. The groups made their concerns known during a press conference in Abuja, noting that some projects listed under the agriculture budget appear to have little or sometimes absolutely nothing to do with farming or food systems. AIT's Ngozi Onyejako has more.
Out of the 58.47 trillion naira proposed national budget for 2026, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security is expected to receive 1.45 trillion naira, about 2.48% of total government spending. But according to Action Aid Nigeria, the Community of Agriculture Non-State Actors, Small-Scale Women Farmers Organization in Nigeria, and Young Farmers in Nigeria, their location raises more questions than it answers. The groups say the government is still falling short of its commitment under the Maputo Declaration on Agriculture and Food Security, the Malabo Declaration on Accelerated Agriculture Growth and Transformation, and the Kampala Declaration on Agriculture Transformation Continental Agreement that encourage African countries to devote a larger share of their budgets to agriculture. They warn that the shrinking share of funding could weaken the sector's ability to drive economic growth and address Nigeria's worsening food insecurity. The analysis also highlighted what critics describe as logistical adventures in the budget. For instance, research institutes are reportedly planning to distribute farm inputs to farmers in states well outside their operational jurisdictions. Arrangements, the group say, may require not just tractors or fertilizers, but possibly a good GPS.
For 2.48% of the total budget of 58.47 trillion naira proposed for 2026. When added to the total budget proposed for the Ministry of Livestock, this raises the share of the agriculture sector as a percentage of the total federal government budget proposal to 2.59%.
Broad-based projects and those tagged as constituency projects that could help push the nation's food and nutrition objective should be guided by an effective implementation framework to ensure inclusion and effective oversight.
The review further reveals that several ministries, departments, and agencies without any formal agriculture mandate have allocations to distribute farm inputs. Even more puzzling are some constituency projects listed under the agriculture budget. According to the groups, several projects appear unrelated to farming, while others are vaguely described that implementation may require a degree of interpretation usually reserved for poetry. One example cited involves a research institute in Niger State budgeting to supply inputs to farmers in Rivers State, an initiative critics say could become the agricultural equivalent of long-distance relationship management. The analysis also examined funding for the National Agriculture Development Fund, which is said to receive 94.65 billion naira in the proposed budget. Of that amount, 94.14 billion naira is allocated for capital projects, while 514 million naira is earmarked for recurrent expenditure.
The very limited release of funds to the agriculture sector in 2025 is already constraining productivity and weakening the sector's ability to play its expected role in economic recovery.
Clearly, it appears that challenges remain in the agriculture sector in Nigeria. Prioritizing the public expenditure to address the critical challenges faced by the agricultural sector will therefore not only help to enhance growth, but also propel the nation towards becoming a food-secure country.
Meanwhile, allocations to programs under the National Agri-Food System Investment Plan and the National Agriculture Technology and Innovation Policy have dropped by 15.26%, declining from 10.497 trillion naira in 2025 to 8.896 trillion naira in the proposed 2026 budget. The groups warned that reduced funding combined with the long-standing problem of delayed budget releases could undermine Nigeria's economic growth ambitions. They argue that without timely and properly targeted spending, the country's long-term food security goals may remain just that, goals. According to the organizations, meaningful progress will depend on strong investment in agricultural extension services, improved access to credit, and greater support for women and young people working in the sector. Until then, they say Nigeria's farmers may continue to wait, sometimes patiently, sometimes not, for the budget to bear fruit. Ngozi Onyejiaku, AIT News, Abuja.
And that's Kakaaki Business. I am Olamide Ariyo.
Well, indeed, thank you, Larry, for that one. And we look forward to the outcomes from the presidential visit to the United Kingdom. The president leaves today for the UK and will be received by the monarch. And first time in 37 years, a leader from Nigeria is visiting the United Kingdom on a partnership like one that is mentioned earlier. But here's with the wind blowing. Good morning.
Good morning, Adora.
How are you, Chicks?
I'm fine. Great to be here. It's Tuesday. We're still, looking forward to what the week has.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you've held down the fort very well.
Oh, thank you. I must. They say women can too, can't
Absolutely. Even probably better than men as well.
He said it, not me. Oh, we do have a special report.
Yes, we do have a special report, and it's on Showeray versus, the federal government. This has been an ongoing issue. That, case, the alleged cyberbullying case, has also been adjourned as well. So we'll check out this report, and we'll be back in a bit. To stay with us.
Activist and publisher of Sahara Reporters Omoyele Showere's trial on cyberbullying charges brought by the State Security Service continued before a federal high court in Abuja on Monday. The tension in court arose shortly after the prosecution closed its case following the cross-examination of its only witness, an SSS operative, Cyril Nosike. Prosecuting counsel Akinlolu Kehinde, SAN, then asked the court to direct the defense to open its case. Defense counsel Marshal Abubakar informed the court that Showore intended to file a no-case submission, arguing that the prosecution had failed to establish a prima facie case. He thereafter asked the court to adjourn the matter until July. This was opposed by the prosecution, which insisted that the defense was attempting to delay the trial, asking the court to instead order a day-to-day proceedings. The trial judge, Justice Mohammed Umar, noted that the prosecution had concluded its case quickly, while the defense had spent 4 days cross-examining the lone witness. The defense counsel appeared dissatisfied with the comments and began speaking loudly while addressing the court. Despite repeated warnings from the judge to lower his voice, the lawyer continued, prompting Justice Umar to threaten contempt proceedings. The tense situation caused interventions from other lawyers in court who pleaded with the judge to exercise leniency. At one point, Justice Umar ordered him to step forward and kneel in the courtroom. While the appeals were still ongoing, the court adjourned the matter to April 13, 2026 for the adoption of final written addresses. Earlier in the proceedings, the prosecution had raised concerns that Showore brought a recording device into the dock and asked the court to order its seizure. Showore denied the allegations, explaining that he only had his mobile phone, power bank, and eyeglasses with him. Justice Umar reminded the defendant that the court had earlier directed that no electric devices should be brought into the dock, while instructing Showore to hand over the items to his lawyers through the court official. At the start of the hearing, Defense Counsel Abubakar had requested that the matter be stood down until 12:30 p.m., saying he had only just been informed of his sitting and had left the case file in his office while attending to another matter. Although the prosecution opposed the request, the judge granted the stand down. When proceedings resumed, Abubakar cross-examined the SSS witness for nearly 2 hours. During the session, he attended several newspaper publications and asked the witness to read from some of them in court. Chibuzo Okezie, AIT News, Abuja.
Welcome back from that report there by our colleague on the trial of rights activist Omoyele Sowore for alleged cyberbullying, which has been adjourned to 13th of April. Very informative report there. And for Sowore, this back and forth, with the federal government, he's always in the face of individuals. How do they? Will I use the word courageous? Even though, he really doesn't have, political power and all of that. But we'll see what this case will bring forth, for Sowore and the federal government as well.
Yeah, I think I've been in an event once and someone called Sowore a judiciary adventurist. He's always in court, with over one case or the other. But then again, it always, amplifies several issues that underlay maybe borderline between corruption, due process, governance, accountability. And true to itself, I think that some of the issues that have been raised time and time again, remember, he played the front role, torchlight bearer during the NSAS movement and the call to accountability over those who were allegedly short at that, Lekki toll gate. And beyond that, we've seen him come out to hold account and call out, of the former IGP, Betokon, time and time again, saying it's about time he left. And I think when he was removed, of course, you saw his statements on X, thank God we have removed, XSX, Y, and Z. And then you also see him coming out separately to also demand accountability from the government, the administration. So, again, somebody has to bear the toga, of either the mantra of, the people's voice. But how somebody would say genuine all of this in between the lines? It's it genuinely, created to trigger, responses or reactions from the federal government for the sake of, the fame, the obscurity that comes without being in the news all the time? Or is it real-time, intervention, activating people's voices locally and otherwise, and creating a searchlight on what's happening inwards in Nigeria? So, several quarters or several divides would argue which one, the lean on more. But what I do believe is that Sowore has, come through the time and stages in Nigeria's political sphere, from his day as a student union leader to the time when he was incarcerated time and time again, to speak, I do not know if anybody just wants to go to prison for the sake of it, being famous, of course. But I do believe that this cyberbullying case, which has been adjourned to the 13th of April, the saga and the drama that, you saw that happened at the court, it's one of the major highlights of Sowore, So, if there's no drama, someone would say there's no Sowore. However, what is it about? What is the underlying issues? And I think that's what Nigerians want to focus on, because if these stays, stands the test of time, it means that cyberbullying can actually be used truly to be able to find those who are guilty of it, or can be politically activated, against those who truly are speaking truth to power.
Yes, and this major statement, from you, it's one that is very concerning. How do we also draw the line, with this cyberbullying, act and all? How do we make sure it's not used by powerful people, people who are wealthy, to oppress, another individual? And it doesn't even have to be, the government, in this one now, as it's Sowore versus the government. It could be somebody who's richer than myself, feeling, because I said something against them and because they have the power, the money to push further, on the case and all of that. So how do we, draw a line there. And because I've seen, some cases on social media where some certain individuals just get, the police involved, go to courts and all because they have the monies, to push this thing. So it's very important to have it in clear, terms, what these issues are about and what can be termed as cyberbullying, and not. If somebody is stating facts which you feel you do not like, can that be termed as cyberbullying? Because they're stating it, over and over again. So there are different sides, to issues and cases like this. But when somebody, obviously there'll always be people saying, oh, he's doing it just for the fame, he's doing it for the money or whatever. And there are people who will also be on the side saying, yes, he's actually doing this for Nigeria and Nigerians. So I think it's just for whichever one you feel suits you, in terms of as an individual to feel, okay, yes, you're in support of one party over the other, and you just pick a side. I think that's it.
I think what this speaks, in between the line and outside the box as well, is the fact that the social media is no longer ambiguous. Yeah. There is no longer invisibility and obscurity to how people use that as a tool to either defame characters, spread, untrue news, or, sort of use it as a mandate to destroy, people politically or whatever. Again, it also is no longer going to be used to debrand Nigeria without people finding out what the network of engagement has been. And so, again, it has its cons and its pros. For those who are up to mischief and up to no good, the Cyber Act sort of beams a sight-light on them. However, it's how far, like you say, is too far, and to what extent is a law for the people and the law for the rich, and how will they use it to either, bring justice or to intimidate citizens. And I think that's where we probably need to look at how this case with Showore versus the federal government will play out on the cyberbullying case. Well, it's been adjourned for the 13th of April. We'll look forward to what the outcomes will be, and our eyes will be on the matter. Indeed.
Yes, absolutely. It's time for us to go on a short break and bring you our social interventions. Do stay with us.
Stay with us.
The stories now break online. Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, Official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live.
Focus Nigeria. It's a huge task, but we take it on.
Where is the law? National Assembly is not doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria. It is America that is doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria.
Monday to Friday on Focus Nigeria, we identify the nagging issues.
Some people put people in poverty deliberate misplacement of priorities and brought people on their knees to suffer.
We seek answers to the tough challenges.
And because of
the former president, what I know is that he has not turned his membership card. He has not been attending your meeting.
Leave that to us to deal.
There's no shying away from the issues.
The system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage.
No sitting on the fence.
The same thing that made you live where you are may confront you.
Focus Nigeria, 10 a.m., Monday to Friday on AIT. People, politics, and power brings context and clarity to issues and events in governance, democracy, and development. On People, Politics, and Power, we feature people who shape the events and define the issues.
A lot of the agencies are still struggling with implementation of freedom of information.
The government should come. We need Nigeria to work.
We examine the interplay and interaction of politics with power and their impact on policies and the people.
It's about getting the system to deliver the kind of electoral outcome that
people will be happy with.
People, Politics and Power with Imoni Amarere.
Will low-performing agencies be held to account? Or will the numbers fade after the headlines?
At 1 p.m. every Monday and Friday on AIT. The issues as they break. The multitude, the political figures, the state and non-state actors.
It's a serious threat to democracy.
And our government seem to be incapable of protecting.
The scheming.
This is not a period we should say bow and go. Every part of this country is important.
The intrigues.
There can be no one person that is bigger than the party.
Deft moves and the momentous declaration.
We didn't get any protection. I'm not particularly against anybody.
We track and capture them all.
I don't believe in godfatherism in politics.
Follow in-depth analysis and no-holds-barred interviews.
Armed forces of the country is well capable. They need the political will.
Are they just waking up from sleep? Is there complacency?
Feel the pulse of happenings in the political arena on AIT Democracy Today. Widely acclaimed authority on politics. Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. Nigerian time. The stories now break online.
Hello everyone and welcome to Get Fit in 60 Seconds with Dolly Phillips. Now everyone has 60 seconds in every day to spare. So if you're ready, let's go! Well done! I hope you had a great workout. Anyway, what I need you to do is to follow us on Instagram at Alpha Fitness Studios and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Alpha Fitness Studios, for free workout videos, free dance videos, sales and promos, and make sure you join us at the gym, Alpha Fitness Studios in Lekki Phase 1 next time you're in Lagos. So until the next time, bye-bye!
Hello, great people of Nigeria. Welcome to the Leadership Clinic. Today I'll be speaking to you on the power of examples. Your example speaks louder than your word. Sleeping becomes interesting.
Have you ever wondered why some daddies think it is mommy's duty to do school runs? Most times it is believed whether you're a very busy daddy or a single daddy, your involvement helps your child psychologically by performing better in his or her academics. Now, dropping off and picking up your child from school also helps you bond with your child. It is a great time to talk about goings-on in your child's life. Also, make sure you attend teacher-parents meetings in your child's school. It helps you become aware of your child's grades. It promotes better behavior and emotional health. So here's thumbs up to daddies who already do school runs, and to daddies who don't, get involved today and relieve mommy of some stress. All you need to do is to draw up a drop-off and pick up daily or weekly timetable. And remember, sharing is caring. Honestly, that's my 2 kobo.
The stories now break online. Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, Official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live.
Well, thank you for staying with us. It's now time for us to bring you newspaper review this fantastic Tuesday. It's going to be a thrill. We have a delightful two gentlemen here. Dr. Maho is already looking at the back page, and I think they were looking at the back page this morning. I'd make it good morning. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Maho, as always.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. All right, so let's begin in earnest. Daily Asset is our first paper in view there, and what we see again, bomb blasts kill scores, injure others in Maiduguri. Rider says emergency teams respond to attacks near Market Hospital. Train mishap injures passengers on Abuja-Kaduna rail corridor, and that's the lead story, front page of the Daily Asset.
Now to the Daily Monitor, we have many feared dead, injured as explosions rock Maiduguri. Police deploy EOD to UMTH Monday markets. That's a bold story from the Daily Monitor.
Now to Daily Trust, and still the thrust of their story is the explosion. Many feared dead in Maiduguri explosion. And then you also see below that picture story where you have that on the front page. Witnesses recount Kaduna Abuja train accident, and that's also on the front page of the Daily Trust.
And now to the Standard Times, we have scores killed, injured as bombs explode in Maiduguri.
Now let's look at Observer's Times. They've taken a different outlook to it, but this time I think a different story. Here it says, troops kill ISWAP, most wanted commander, Bako Gogoro. Arrest bandit TikToker Saleh Ibrahim. Northern Coalition hails New Dawn and security operations. Borno residents celebrate as terrorists flee with heavy losses, and that's on page 1. But above that, you would also see that story there that talks about APC sticks to zoning formula ahead of 2026 convention, signals stability in party leadership race.
All right, now to the Authority newspaper. 500 cheat death as trains collide on Abuja-Kaduna rail corridor.
And the Al Jazeera Nigeria looks at another train derailment as incidents near 200 in 6 years. NRC confirms injuries in Abuja-Kaduna train mishap on page 9.
All right, now to this Nigeria, we have Tinubu takes Nigeria's reform drive to the UK. It is a boost for investors' confidence in our economy, says Minister Idris.
Now let's go to Nigerian News Direct. What we still see there is the UK visit. Says their state visit Nigeria, UK set to sign historic £746 million deal to modernize Apapa tin can ports on page 4. Now we go to Daybreak newspaper.
All right, now to the Daybreak, we have Nigeria-UK ties take center stage as Tinubu pays historic visit. Marks Nigeria's first full state visit to the United Kingdom in 37 years.
All right, let's go over to the Daily Global this morning. Daily Global is still looking at the state visit. Says Tinubu begins state visit to UK today, and that's on the front page of the Daily Global.
And now to the New Telegraph, we have Middle East crisis. Help secure Strait of Hormuz or Trump warns allies. Flight suspended as Dubai airport after drone sparks fire. That's the bold story from the New Telegraph.
All right, let's look at The Guardian. The Guardian is looking at a different lead story this morning. They've gone human angle, but still say Middle East crisis. International travel squeeze. Tickets spike by 100% as airlines cancel flights, and that's on page 6 of The Guardian. Above that, you would see Nigerians anticipate improved ties as Tinubu departs for the UK this morning on their page 3 story.
All right, now to the Daily Sun. We have 2027. ADC alleges plots to make Tinubu sole candidate. Claims ruling party destabilizing other parties. INEC urges mass voter education ahead of 2027 poll.
Leadership is also leading and sailing with that. Convention APC retains existing zoning formula for national offices. The lead story there takes its cake from presidency tackles ADC over claim of plot to make candidate.
So the
this morning and printing there rather in black, Nigeria's reforms boosting global confidence investment, and that's coming from Idris. And you also see that list of gains of Tinubu's UK state visit, revenue mobilization, spending efficiency, top priorities. That's also coming from Oyedele.
And to the Nigerian pilots, we have FG raises alarm, says Nigeria losing health workers to Japa syndrome. That exodus of health workers has placed enormous pressure on nation's healthcare system. That's on page 8, and that's our final paper for today.
So let's bring in our reviewers here this morning. Lots of the leads coming from the angle of insecurity. Again, bomb blast kill scores, injure others in Maiduguri. We had Daily Asset top that, Daily Monitor, Standard Times, Daily Trust. A lot of the papers ran with that as their lead. So let's bring you in here, Majid. I mean, some say, yes, this is a historic time for insecurity, where they see that the leads of some of the ISWAP team have been taken out. The TikToker also has been arrested. But again, what do you say to this as a lead this morning?
While there are some gains in the war against terror, we cannot overlook or understate the loss of lives, particularly of our officers and men that are paying the supreme price to secure this country and to make sure that these terrorists don't overrun the Nigerian state. I say this because whenever it looks like the media is paying scant attention to our fallen heroes, and when I also observe that the leadership of the armed forces and, of course, the leadership of the Nigerian state itself seems to be paying very scant attention, or not paying the kind of attention that is required when soldiers are martyred. Because when soldiers go to fight for the Nigerian state and they are killed, they are martyrs for the Nigerian state. It creates a serious disincentive for those that are fighting, because they feel that they are going to die for the Nigerian state and die for nothing, uncelebrated, dishonored in death, abandoned and ignored. It is a very wrong culture. We saw how the entire American country, the entire American nation stood still for just 6 officers, 6 service personnel, 6. The president himself was there to receive their bodies. I was watching that event on CNN. The CNN anchor informed the viewers that at this point, even CNN is going to go silent in honor of the fallen heroes. These are people that are fighting a war you could say was really necessary. Imagine if they had been killed on home soil fighting domestic terrorists. It does no good to the morale of those that are fighting in the battle if you continuously obfuscate the reportage of losses of our men, officers and men. It's not because we are trying to hype the losses of the Nigerian side. No. It's to give honor to whom honor is due. When people enlisted into the armed forces, they signed what is called a contract of unlimited liability, meaning you are going to die, possibly, in this profession. That's about the only profession I know of where you willingly sign a contract of unlimited liability. The media, as journalists, we don't do that. Medical doctors don't do that, but soldiers, military personnel must do that. So it is unfortunate that at a time that we've recorded strings of losses, even recently, somebody from my own home state died, paid the supreme price, along with his colleagues in Plateau, and it is not mentioned anywhere. Now you complain that people are no longer interested in joining the army. Why would they join the army? When they are alive, poor welfare, poor equipment, poor motivation. Now they die, you can't even honor them. You can't even give honorable mention. When Abu Ali died in the battlefield, for instance, some time ago, the way Abu Ali was celebrated in death motivated people to say, okay, so if I die in similar circumstances, this country will not forget me. So it makes people want to lay down their lives for the Nigerian state. But when you treat fallen heroes in this manner, and you expect people to want to willingly do the same thing, they will not. They will not. And so the communication pattern from the leadership of the armed forces must change. this idea of downplaying our losses, we're not fighting a foreign nation. We don't need to deploy propaganda. Say it as it is. We're all Nigerians. Now, having said this, there is a trend that is coming up again in the war, in the war against terror, suicide bombing. While it is very easy to frontally confront insurgency because people are shooting guns and shooting RPGs, you can actually confront them through a direct military strategy. But when it comes to suicide bombing, it is very difficult to solve because you don't even know who's who. Now, this brings me back to the question, to the origin of this crisis in the first place. I'm saying this because the number of men we are losing in the theater in the Northeast is so alarming that I hope one day we'll not wake up and there'll be nobody there fighting to protect the Nigerian state from that terror group there. I hope so. I hope we don't get there. Now that suicide bombing has returned, I think it is time we need to have a conversation about this whole enterprise of the aspiration for an Islamic state in Nigeria. For me, we need to have a conversation now, a national conversation. I'm not one of those who used to think that it was necessary to have a national dialogue or restructuring, but I think I'm beginning to change my mind. We need to have a conversation. We need to sit down as a people, as Nigerians, to decide how we want to move forward as a country. I say this because we cannot battle Boko Haram insurgency, a religiously motivated, ideologically inclined terror group. And in the mainstream, in the main society, we have enablers, those who are trying to deploy politics to achieve the same goal with these people. So if this be the case, I think we need to have a conversation now and let us actually stop this fighting and wasting of lives from across the country. Because people that are fighting in Borno are drawn from across the country. Now, if the Muslim north of Nigeria actually wants an Islamic state, Sharia governed territory, let them bring that demand to the table. However, other sections of the country must be allowed to bring their own demands to the table. So, for instance, the Nigerian Delta states and other oil-producing communities can also bring their demand of 100% resource control to the same table. The Southeast can bring other the Aburi Accord demands to the same table. Okay, maybe confederation or a very loose federation. The Southwest can bring their own demand of rigid regionalism to the table. Let us now restructure Nigeria along these demands. So we grant to the Muslim North a Sharia Islamic governed state so that Boko Haram can stop the fighting and now have what they want. But in exchange for that, there will be no longer monthly allocation of crude oil resources because it now becomes 100% controlled by those who also own the oil wells. I think that would be the final solution to this problem because you can't keep fighting a menace, a violent manifestation of Islamism, while Islamism is still rife in the society.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Maho here. I mean, he's spoken quite extensively and sort of landed on the need to have a dialogue on this issue of suicide bombing, especially when it comes to, having Sharia states. But looking at the losses, of course, you saw the leading stories with it. How do you feel?
The losses in this recent attack. You know, when we were here last week, we spoke about the death within a period of 1 week of 3 army commanders, one in Kukawa, Goza, and I think Konduga. And we did speak about the inability of the media to give, or rather the complicity of the media, or refusal of the media to give adequate coverage to the losses being incurred by the Nigerian military, which present a very bad optics in relation to how the Nigerian media is covering insurgency, terrorism in the northern part of the country, because it will seem as if there's a conspiracy of silence by the media to downplay, the security challenges we are having as a country. However, be that as it may, I've been in the newsroom all my life, and at times I talk about this concept of headline stress disorder, HSD, headline stress disorder. As a media person, when you're in the newsroom and continuously you are confronted with bad news, consistently making the headline of your publication, it causes a lot of, stress to you as a person that have to report it. And again, over time, we equally have to, as journalists, we are equally trained about what you call conflict-sensitive reporting and the need to always put national security first when you are reporting story. So to that extent, you always try to create a balance between should I report or should I not report. Moji spoke about, when the United States lost 3 of its servicemen in the war in the Middle East, the ongoing war in the Middle East. And, the president himself, the United States President Donald Trump, and his team, they have to stand up to pay honor. At least a minute of silence to the fallen hero. In the Nigerian case, the crisis has eaten so deep. We have been in this crisis now for over a decade, running to a decade and a half. If we are to be standing, doing a minute silence for our foreign heroes, we'll be in perpetually standing, in silence for our foreign hero. However, as media, we normally leave the defense authorities to handle that communication in terms of tell us what is happening, tell us what you want us to communicate to the public. Because in the past, we've had instances where the media have gone ahead to report most of this issue, and they face backlash. The office invaded. I remember Daily Trust, about 2 or 3 years ago, when the issue was that they are reporting on operational procedure, which is an internal affair of the military. The office were invaded, materials carted away, some of their staff, arrested. So to that extent, media houses want the defense authority, give us the story, we'll report. But often when you go and report on your own, the likelihood of a backlash and the fact that you are not being sensitive in your reporting and issues that may be tied around, this has to do with national security, can come back to haunt you. So that's why at times, it's not as if the media is not sensitive to what is happening, the security threat to this country. But at times you just want to be careful. You just want to be circumspect so that you don't get the backlash,
what I hear you say is
backlash from the authorities.
Yeah, so what I hear you say is that the Bureau for the Military Information Center perhaps needs to be able to have some level of, perhaps conversation to what must go out.
Proactively give us what you want us to report. But as a media person, if I begin to dig into security issues that borders on national security,
and then find something,
and report it, you may find out that you get yourself into trouble, unnecessary, because the case can be twisted around and used against you. That's why you find out that, even when those 3, which was a big story, the story was out there, but often in stories in the media, I've forgotten the concept now, I hope I remember. Not until a story is reported in the media, often, psychologically, it remains in the realm of speculation. But when a paper, a national paper, carries the story, you are giving it an air of authenticity. Well, and there's always this argument, within the media and in academic circle of should the media always report it as it is? And, or should you report it taking into consideration issues of national security?
So perhaps maybe because of want of time, I would want to ask the accountability question here, because if you look at the Daily Trust, locations for where there's multiple explosions happen in Maiduguri is the Monday Market area, which is people-centered, post office area, which is people-centered, then
And
the University of
hospital.
Maiduguri Teaching Hospital, which is people-centered.
And he said the only thing I see there,
A sense of
it creates a sense of anxiety, and it plays into what the terrorists want. What is terrorism? Terrorism is designed to create fear in the minds of people in such a way that you are afraid to live your life normally. Last week we spoke about what happened, the killing. In recent time, most of the attacks have been concentrated on military formations, the so-called, forward bases, set up by the military to confront the insurgents. So that's why you had a loss of commanding officer. But why this attack is unique in the sense that it's taking a different dimension from what it has been in the last few months. It's a direct attack on soft targets using suicide bombers and targeting civilians, not military establishment.
All right, we do have...
And that's what calls for concern,
indeed,
as far as I'm concerned, in relation to this.
Indeed, I mean, our producer tells us that we do have limited time, so let's look at other subsequent leads.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Nigeria-UK ties take center stage as Tinubu pays historic visits. That's on the Daybreak, this Nigeria News Direct, Daily Global. And the big question will always be, what is the benefit to Nigeria and for Nigerians with such, state visits?
Well, it is always heartwarming to visit friendly nations, state visits like this, some opportunities to renew ties.
First in 37 years.
But that's one thing I don't know why why are we so excited about that. The last time was during the IBB regime, right? Yeah. So if IBB was granted the opportunity or the pledge of state visit, a military dictator, I don't see why that should be used as a benchmark to make it look like there's something exceptional for a civilian, democratically elected president. So if IBB can be granted state visit by the UK, it simply tells you that there's nothing so spectacularly, special about it. So let's face the real issues.
The nitty-gritty.
For me, a country must have your national security goals, national economic objectives well defined before going to even pay state visit to anybody. So the question is, do we have something in mind as we're going to the UK? What exactly are we taking to the UK? What are we targeted in the UK that want to use state visit to diplomatically engage with the authorities of the UK that will be of advantage to the Nigerian national security or national economic objectives? These are the questions. And for me, we've not really had a watertight, precise, ambitious foreign policy objective for a long time. Nigerian political class appear to be more interested in, internal affairs than external affairs. That is why even during campaigns for elections, hardly will you hear any of our presidential candidates having very strong points when it comes to foreign policy. So I'm not so optimistic beyond the fact that this is just an opportunity to renew what has been a very close cultural, economic, political ties with our former colonial master. So otherwise, I don't already see anything that will come out of it, except the Nigerian delegation has on the table, as we're speaking, something that they intend to extract from the UK. But otherwise, I'm not so excited.
All right, with this state visit now, with what happened yesterday in Maiduguri, should that also be like a push for the president, security-wise, to think of how best, the UK can help, Nigeria? It
dampens the visit. If we live in a normal country, what happened in Maiduguri yesterday is enough for the president to call off the visit.
Okay.
Yeah. You cannot be back home and your country is on fire. Terrorists are slaughtering people in their hundreds, civilians in their hundreds, and you are embarking on a foreign trip. It doesn't add up. You understand? We've seen instances in the past where foreign leaders are about to embark on a trip or have already landed where they are going, and when there's crisis at home, they come back to their country. When in Nigeria's situation, when there's crisis at home, we jet out of the country. If you look at the statement coming out of government, the ruling party, is you come to the conclusion is that what they're interested in respect of this visit, is more about optics, creating the illusion that, look, Mr. President is accepted in the international scene, you know, to have been, that's where the 37 years, first time in 37 years, he has done the impossible. But at the end of the day, we need to do a cost-benefit analysis. What is the benefit? What is, like Moji said, what is our foreign policy objective? What are we putting on the table as we are going there? I look at the list of those going with Mr. President. And from the list, you can actually conclude that it's a jamboree. 9 ministers, National Security Advisor, Akpabio. What are they going to do there? What are they putting on the table? These are questions that we should ask. How much? If you have 9 ministers, and you have the Attorney General of the Federation, you have the Senate President, you have, among others, and these people will go with, on their own with a retinue of 8. Yeah. How much is it costing us as a nation to embark on this visit? And what are we getting back from this visit? What optics, what are we creating for a UK that we don't even have a substantive ambassador as we speak? So there are many questions, but as far as I'm concerned, the government of the day is celebrating just mere optics. Oh, 37 years. It has never happened before. It happened, we've broken the jinx after 37 years for a sitting president, who happened to be Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to be invited on a state visit to the United Kingdom. But we are not paying attention to what benefit we accrue to us as a nation at the end of the visit.
Okay, all right. Also, we have the Middle East crisis, international travel squeeze, tickets spike by 100% as airlines cancel flights, and that's from The Guardian. And just to squeeze in the New Telegraph, Middle East helps secure Strait of Hormuz or Trump won. So it looks like we're not having an end to this issue, you know, anytime soon, and it's going to also impact, I think, all of us here buying petrol at 1, 2,
Even
1, 3.
you know that there was a story in one of the papers that is after several months of easing, inflation has spiked. Yeah. Inflation will continue to spike as a result of the increase in transportation costs, which is a direct effect of, you know, increase in the prices of petroleum products. Inflation will definitely go up. So what happens in Iran reverberates across the world, and Nigeria is not immune.
But that's what I need to add. You said Nigeria is not immune. The rest of the world has immune themselves against.
Yeah, I was about to ask, how is Nigeria?
Asian countries have placed a price cap on energy prices. That is subsidy.
No price cap for you.
Iran, where the crisis is happening, has not increased fuel price. Electricity is still very much in Iran. Other basic services are still being guaranteed by the government. Saudi Arabia, most of the other Middle East countries have done the same. America, the headquarters of capitalism, has not only released crude from its reserves.
Do we have reserves in Nigeria actively?
Okay, so they've released crude from their reserves, and they're even considering waiving sanctions momentarily or temporarily on Russian oil so as to bring in cheaper sources of energy for their markets. You see, governments are doing everything possible. Our own government is so comfortable. They don't care. They don't know that they should care. There is no mechanism, no backup plan, no contingency for times like this. To them, market forces will just dictate what will happen. So if the price of crude goes to $150 per barrel, domestic price of petrol goes to 1,500 or 2,000 naira, so be it.
We don't have, the point is that we don't have strategic oil reserve. We are not immune from international oil shock because our economic planners, they don't even see it as a priority.
We don't forestall issues.
Subsidy is gone.
That is why you are subjected to the vagaries of international oil price. As an oil-producing country, like every oil-producing country in the world, from Saudi Arabia, you mentioned Iran, you talked about Venezuela and all that. As of today, as we speak, do you know how much is a liter of petrol in Iran? is one of the cheapest in the world. The war has not affected them. Their refining capacity, though, has been degraded significantly, but they are still able to provide basic energy for their country. You know, Mojid always talk about what it is called energy security. Nigeria doesn't have energy security. Energy security, which is based on two factors: availability and affordability. Even if it is available and it is not affordable, we don't have energy security. Where it is affordable and it's not available, we don't have energy security. So the two needs to go together before we can begin to talk about energy security as a country, which we don't have.
Which is a government responsibility, not Dangote's responsibility. Government. That was why we faltered. I'm an issue. Subsidy is gone. Subsidy cannot be gone from energy prices. Nigeria is the only oil producing country I know that has internationalized and dollarized its domestic oil and gas industry market. Nigeria is the only country. And this Iran-US-Israeli war is going to expose the underbelly of Nigerian economic policy makers. I was amused when I saw some people that supported subsidy removal coming up now to say that government should intervene to cushion it. I said, intervene by who? How? Where would government intervene from? How?
All right, I think that's what would draw the curtain.
The bear has flown out of the cage.
The politicians, many will say, with 2027 elections in the shadows and conventions around the corner, the conversation and focus for a lot of them, a lot of the mandate is to win the next elections, not necessarily what's happening in the Straits of Hormuz and the oil price. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, as always. Thank you for all this, listening to our call to come out this early in the morning, denying your REM sleep at some point. All right, we'll take a quick break, and then when we come back, our first conversations will be up in earnest. To stay with us.
Break online. Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads.
Monday to Friday on Focus Nigeria, we identify the nagging issues.
So people put people in poverty deliberately, deliberate misplacement of priorities, and brought people on their knees to suffer.
We seek answers to the tough challenges.
And because of the former president, what I know is that he has not turned his membership card. He has not been attending your meeting.
Leave that to us to deal.
There's no shying away from the issues.
The system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage.
No sitting on the fence.
The same thing that made you live where you are may confront you.
Focus Nigeria, 10 a.m., Monday to Friday on AIT. People, politics, and power brings context and clarity to issues and events in governance, democracy, and development. On People, Politics, and Power, we feature people who shape the events and define the issues.
A lot of the agencies are still struggling with implementation of freedom of information.
The government should come. We need Nigeria to work.
We examine the interplay and interaction of politics with power and their impact on policies and the people.
It's about getting the system to deliver the kind of electoral outcome that people will be happy with.
People, Politics, and Power with Imoni Amarere.
Will low-performing agencies be held to account? Or will the numbers fade after the headlines?
At 1 p.m. every Monday and Friday on AIT.
Welcome back. You're still watching Kakaaki, the African Voice on Africa Independent Television. And now we're moving on to our first interview, first conversation of the day, and it's on the 2027 election countdown. And we have Victor Terembe, who's a civil rights activist in the studio, and also Andrew Ilesomi, a politician and a public affairs analyst as well. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Okay. All right, so looking at, this 2027 election countdown, we're witnessing, what many analysts call the decimation of the opposition through strategic defections and internal issues. It could be leadership crisis, and all of that. So what is the likely consequence of Nigeria entering 2027 without any viable opposition?
Okay, thank you very much. First and foremost, my name's Ambassador Prince M.L. Sukwo, not Victor. Okay. I want to begin by saying that every system is bound to rupture if it does not follow the tenets of practice. Going by what you just asked, the defections from the People's Democratic Party and most of our, politicians going to the APC, as it were, the ruling party. First and foremost, you want to begin by asking, why the defection? I started by saying that every system that lacks a structure will rupture. For you to begin to shift grounds, that means your internal house has issues. And once upon a time in this country, we know that the PDP was the ruling party, and it continued like that for 16 solid years. Now, what held the party then as a political party? What held the system together? And what is causing the current defection? So there is actually an issue within the party system across boards, not just at the state level, even at the national level. And that is why most party stewards feel the ruling party is actually a safer house for them to defect to. And I don't think it's a one-party system as it is being said, but I think the ruling party has set a pace and it's blazing the trail, and that is why you see other politicians moving from their own party to the ruling party. Because once upon a time, APC too was a party that was just, if you want to call it scanty, it had no much politicians in it, but now you see people shifting grounds because they feel the APC has a structure that is viable, that is sustainable, that can sustain them, and that is why the defection.
All right, so when you think about numbers, that's the currency of power for any political party.
Sure,
absolutely.
Sure.
So I'm guessing that the number of governors that have defected to the APC, because over 31, shows the majority of the political power moving to APC under that mandate. So would you also say that that doesn't also sort of lean towards a one-party affair system? Because when the state governors take the structure of the party and take the mantra of the party, take all of the ideals of the party that they used to be with, move it into into APC, doesn't that already usurp the power of opposition?
Yeah, it does in a way, but you also want to ask yourself, what is the opposition party doing to strengthen its members? Because if they're actually doing what it takes, they won't have such massive defection. Because why will I stay in a party when I'm not really even sure of my next win? Why will I stay in a party when I have, party rancors, here and there, every now and then? So if I see the other party to be a safer house for me, why not? I will have to go. Now, the issue has been a recurring decimal because we have not seen the PDP making, moves to strengthen the structure of their party system. And if you look at it, there's almost nobody again left in the PDP. Virtually everybody has eloped to the APC. Just like you've said, shifting all its powers, all its rights and privileges to APC. But it's not a one-party system. Why? Because we still have other parties, like in the Labour, we have some, the
ADC.
Yeah, ADC. We still have some persons there.
SDP.
Yeah, and you don't have much of this rancor in other parties as we have it in PDP. So that means PDP has a fundamental internal issue that until she sits down with her, entire structure to fix, it might continue like this. But I don't see us moving to a one-party system.
Now, most of the opposition parties, some people will say that they're just at a phase of survival. It's just survival at the moment. So what can they do, differently to move away from this phase of survival, looking at 2027? And is this time frame, enough for them to reinvent themselves for 2027?
Okay, yeah, talking about the time frame, we have just about 18 months, and the time frame is actually very, very, very short. And I think what I would suggest the PDP should do, they should take a cue from the APC. There's no a bad thing there in taking a cue from, how the APC has survived in the last years and has structured its party system to the current level where they are. The problem I feel that is the major issue is what I title me, myself, and I. You see, Nigeria has continued on this trajectory for a very, very long time. I'm writing a book titled The Undoing of Nigeria, centered on greed. And just about everywhere you see this happening, and even in the political parties. Because why would one person want to take the entire glory for a particular party? And I mean, he does that, and he feels nobody is going to say anything about it. Nobody is going to, do anything about it. And then the entire system, it's completely, coercive, because nobody is actually standing up to correct these abnormalities that is actually happening every now and then.
All right. I mean, the PDP seems to be, well, your sense of opposition, but you have other parties like Labour, other parties like ADC, emerging.
Yeah,
and, SDP. Some would say, from what you've seen, the defections that happened at the Senate, with 7 members moving to the ADC, perhaps there may be some news to it that 37 members from the House of Representatives may be moving to the ADC. Perhaps that's also some of the rundown in the news. However, the strength of an opposition is the ability to prefer solutions and to build, systems where conversations around accountability becomes the watchword for the populace and the mass. But then this morning, front page newspaper, we also see the ADC alleging plot of destabilization by the APC within the APC structure. Isn't that also perhaps APC's way of making sure that the party stays in the lead, and perhaps one party stay after all?
I don't know why we keep emphasizing the one-party state thing. I'm still reiterating here again and again that we are not having a one-party state. Yeah, like what you just said, Adora, it's just a political gameplay, and it's not solely about the APC trying to shift grounds, as it were. The ADC is also trying all it can within its own ambit to ensure that it tries to, come as a strong mega force against the APC, considering the fact that other parties have lost its grip, as it were. So that's what you see taking place, yeah.
All right, we do have our second guest, Victor Taiba, join us in the studio this morning. Victor, it's great to finally have you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, it's great to see you. Yeah. All right, I'm sure this is no strange conversation to you. Democracy, political intrigues, 2027, and Nigeria at large. So I'll come to you straight for want of time. Now, when we think about Nigeria's democracy, we're thinking about systems. Think about institutions. Today, when you think about those institutions like the security agencies, like INEC, like judiciary, one would often regard them as a triangle of compromise. This is where accountability in question, is held by the citizens. Now, do you feel that Nigerians trust the systems at this moment? And if they don't, what would be your consideration in terms of rebuilding that trust and the framework?
So I think that, let me just start from the last question.
Yes.
The one way to rebuild the trust in this system is to basically do away with the current government that we have, like do away with APC generally. And that is also simply because, prior to when the party came on board, you could actually say that the court was like the common hope of the mind. When you go to the judiciary, you see like robust conversations, even when it was people were within the same parties, they could debate. And so that gave ground for saying that we can espouse ideas, we can espouse ideologies, basically, and then see how we actually come up with a front. And then we also see where people could go to courts, could win. In this time around, where you've had this government in place, you could find that somebody goes to court to win, and then the person has to go and thank the governor or thank the president. And I'll give you an example of this in Bala Mohammed. When he won his case at this tribunal, the first thing he had to fly from Bauchi to Abuja to go and meet President Buhari to say, thank you. Why do you feel the need to, when you have won a case at a different arm of government, to now go and tell the executive to say thank you? And then you also see what we have like National Assembly, which is like the rubber stamp, which we call the rubber stamp. But they, in their arguments, say that they are working collaboratively with the presidency to ensure that they move forward. But then what you've also found out, like I said, that where you refuse those kind of robust conversation, you deny yourselves, you deny Nigerians the opportunities for them to espouse the laws, these legislations that come in. So simply because you are a party member with the president, you have the large numbers, whatever comes in, we stamp it and go. And so the disinterconnect of that, as a result of that, is you find out that sometimes, like, for example, the tax laws kind of reforms, the bills that were passed, and you find out people saying that, we're just finding out that what was gazetted is different from what we passed here. And so that would have been that they denied themselves that, because it was a robust kind of bill, that we said, let us here as a working legislature that we are going to enact these things, let us discuss it on ideological level, on intellectual level, on the practicability of it, in all levels, regardless of whether it doesn't stop you that you are no longer from the same party with the president. It no longer stops you that when it comes down to elections, you will not work for the re-election of the president. But this is when they propounded the theory of this separation of powers, this was the whole essence, that one person should not have the entire powers to control everything. Somebody else run for governor, lost, has been trying to fight the case, and each time anywhere the person goes, they say, go and meet the president. Get the point? So, that also says that we are channeling power into one hand. So when I met him last time, he said, well, we're talking about one party system, but that is essentially what we have. That is where we are driving towards. And by the way, for example, in Lagos State, you have what was the situation in Lagos State, or what is the current situation in Lagos State? It's a one-party system. And how did we fizzle out the PDP that was strong also in Lagos State, when you had people like Funshaw Williams contesting? You had this in Koro that ran a very viable campaign, even. But now, PDP in Lagos State is also just like a small platform where if anybody wants to contest election and go, how did that happen? And we need to look at that. And also when you go into, okay, let me not even go further, because it also has to do with the issue of resource control.
Absolutely, I was going to go to that.
Yeah, when you go to Lagos and you look at this in LISEC officials are card-carrying members of APC. So how would you expect a fair outcome? Of all the local government elections that happen in this country, Lagos State is one of the shambolic ones that they do. Sorry, I'm just using Lagos State as an example. Maybe because the president is also from Lagos, but I'm just giving examples because I lived in Lagos, so I understood the systems a bit somehow.
So you're saying partisanship politics eludes accountability?
Yes, it does. And But that is not what it's supposed to be, because when it now comes down to resource control, everything comes down to resource control. And I used to make this argument that the Nigerian president is one of the most powerful presidents in terms of the constitutional powers that they enjoy. And so this National Assembly makes their own budget, which is actually statutory, so you cannot do anything about it. Once the money is there, you have to transfer to them. The same thing with the work on the judiciary. But then there are other benefits. Last time we saw Wike building houses for judges. And also when he was this governor of Okana River State, I think he also bought them SUVs and also gave them cars. So how would you, in the principle of fairness, impartiality, be impartial to someone who has been that kind to you?
Okay, now we've talked about the systems now. Now looking at it from the angle of the electorate, looking at what they're seeing, with what's happening with the system, with political systems and all. I'm sure there are people who probably feel that 2027, whether it's thumbprint or whatever their opinions, probably is not going to carry any, weight going into the 2027 election. So how do we turn that around going to 2027 elections to make them to know that even if you don't vote, you're just giving the people, the opportunity to just, put themselves in there by probably, rigging elections and all of that. But go to the, polling units, stand your ground, and make sure that your votes count. So how do we begin to turn that mindset around for 2027?
Very simple. Every change begins with, implementing positive ideals. Yes, it is true that the electorates in some way have lost confidence in the process and the system, as it were. But you see, change is possible at any point in time. First and foremost, I think there should be massive sensitization across boards, from the grassroots level to the state level to the national level, and that is where the media comes in very, very strong. When you begin to, just oppose the ideals of the electoral laws, the reforms, and what have you around, the system, of the political parties and all of that. And then, secondly, ensuring that the majority of the masses are, captured, by empowering, them across boards. There's something about Nigerians. If you've been careful to watch during the COVID-19, when you hand them a little of palliative, you see a whole massive, turnout, because there's really, a whole lot of, hunger in the land and all of that. So now, instead of, handing palliatives, because the people tend to be, weary about the palliative, you empower them. You create systems and structures that begin to touch from the grassroots level. Now, you cannot empower someone who is not, positively, touched. When you fed someone and then you've taught him how to fish, he would be able to sit down and listen to you. Up until yesterday, at my own little level as an individual, I was able to bring in, some very strong foreign diplomats who are currently in the country. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to see if I can seek, a platform, with the presidency to not just do the normal business where, these diplomats come in and then they empower, a selected few. But these diplomats are also, target-driven on the masses. Now, if that particular opening finds a very strong hold, I can tell you it can turn around the electoral, system belief in a twinkle of an eye. Because with the advent of digitalization, you see a whole lot of, young people who are open. They want to be, empowered with AI skills, digital marketing and all of that, but they do not have the resources. But with what we're trying to put in place, once we have the political will and we have the platform, I tell you, if you empower such, massive number of people at the grassroots, I can tell you it's going to turn their mindset around.
Okay, so let's come back to the meat of the matter. Victor, let me bring you back in just as we close. Maybe you summarize this and then give us your parting shot. Civil society has always been, some would say, the conscience of democracy. The marches on the streets, the accountability, Toga, of course, calling the government to issues that are important to the people. And this is often seen in landscapes where weakened institutions take the lead. But going ahead into the 2027 election, and not just that, beyond and after, he talked about, resource management, taking down empowerment to the domestic level. You talked about resource control by, state governors and political party elites. What is the way out for the Nigerian citizen? I mean, what role should the civil society be playing in the next 18 months towards the 2027 election?
So, this is honestly, the role that the civil society will play, they are already playing that role, and it's not different from the roles that we have done, over this couple of years. Because what we have even done is that we have even taken that responsibility. The civil society has even taken that responsibility somehow away from INEC to sensitize, educate electorates. So most of the kind of this important political education you see going around the country are mostly driven by this working on civil society, and not even INEC, not even politicians by themselves, because definitely they don't see the need in saying that we have to do this sensitization or education. So the road that the civil society will do is what they've been doing, which will include making this government open, making government accessible.
But is it working?
Holding, yeah?
Is it working?
So, so it works. It works. And if you want me to back it up, because, for instance, before, budgets used to be too cumbersome. People don't used to understand it. There was no transparency around it. But now we see, and that is why sometimes you can go on social media and then people say, how can they budget 17 billion naira for 244 street lights? So it doesn't mean that one cost additional. So now, before they didn't know, now they know. So now they are talking. So the next step is, so how do we now begin to hold people accountability, those people accountable that you got this money, where did you spend it? Actually, even this in budget tracker are already doing it. So that's a progress. Then when you also look at our additional laws now, that concerns elections, there has also been improvement around it. It is the management of INEC and also politicians that even make it to fail, because I remember in 2022, between 2021 and 2022, when we were fighting for this kind of electoral reforms, one of the mandates or one of the things with our demands was that electronic transmission of results should be included. It was, and which is why INEC thought about Beavers, thought about that portal, IREF. But the problem also was that because the law did not specifically say it must be transmitted through that process, so they had to do it in their own way. So basically, that's what they've been doing, and so that has also been the progress. Maybe as a summary to the last question that he talked about answering, the conversation around how do we now make electorates, come out and campaign, it is an urban and intellectual conversation. There are conversations that we are having here. He actually spoke about the fact that he's bringing some diplomats. So who are those that are going to meet the diplomats? It's mostly going to be people like us who are in the urban areas, who understand this. And when you look at voting patterns, how kind of results come out here, people in the urban areas hardly say their votes. It is in those rural communities where development, where they don't have anything yet. And so when you look, they can lose the city centers, but then they focus their minds around those areas.
All right, Victor, we just have to jump in here because, of course, 8 o'clock is our social, Kakaaki social time, and we do not want the light, but for the fans to sit down and waiting.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Mike, who's the UN Peace Ambassador.
real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live.
Focus Nigeria. It's a huge task, but we take it on.
That is the law. National Assembly is not doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria. It is America that is doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria.
Monday to Friday on Focus Nigeria, we identify the nagging issues.
So people put people in poverty deliberately, deliberate misplacement of priorities, and brought people on their knees to suffer.
We seek answers to the tough challenges.
And because of
For
this
the former president,
yes.
what I know is that he has not turned his membership card.
He has not been attending your meeting.
Leave that to us to deal.
There's no shying away from the
The
issues.
system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage.
No sitting on the fence.
The same thing that made you live where you are may confront you.
Focus Nigeria, 10 a.m., Monday to Friday on AIT. People, politics, and power brings context and clarity to issues and events in governance, democracy, and development. On People, Politics, and Power, we feature people who shape the events and define the issues.
A lot of the agencies are still struggling with implementation of freedom of information.
The government should come. We need Nigeria to work.
We examine the interplay and interaction of politics with power and their impact on policies and the people.
It's about getting the system to deliver the kind of electoral outcome that people will be happy with.
People, Politics, and Power with Imoni Amarere.
Will performing agencies be held to account? Or will the numbers fade after the headlines?
At 1 p.m. every Monday and Friday on AIT.
Hello, everyone. Excellent morning to you. This is Kakaaki Social. I am Onosho Rena Obozege. Welcome to Tuesday. Well, it's not so good on the space of social media, at least beginning with our first story, which is coming from Borno State. And this is because of the 3 explosions, bombings that happened there only yesterday. The police has sent out a statement. That's the Borno State Police Command. They've sent out a statement and they've confirmed that it really happened in 3 places. Number 1 place is the Maiduguri Monday Market. Number 2, University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital, UMTH Gate. And then number 3, that's the 3rd place, Post Office Flyover area in Maiduguri. And according to their investigation, preliminary of course, it shows that the incident were carried out by suspected suicide bombers, and they regret to announce that 23 persons have lost their life and a whole 108 others sustained varying degrees of injuries. That's quite a lot. And then they said that because of the incident, a combined team of police tactical units, the military and other joint security operatives were swiftly deployed to the affected areas. It says that according to what they put out, it happened at about 7:24 p.m. However, what we saw on the space of social media with videos that we timestamped to the snapshot videos, it was showing 7:15 p.m. That's about 9 minutes difference in the report right there. But they report 23 lives lost immediately and 108 persons injured and apparently receiving treatment across board. The Commissioner of Police, CP Naziru Abdul Majid, has also visited the affected locations, and he has conducted on-the-spot assessment of the situation and to evaluate ongoing response. And this was just after Iftar yesterday in Borno State, 3 whole places in one state just yesterday. All right, let's just take some sight and sound of the experience right there, and then we come back for your reactions.
bakin wajen security, wajen inda ake checkpoint na security. Wanda kuke gani wannan a kwance shi ma bom ne tashi kai ba na sun taru a gefe na. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi bakin tiya da kuke gani gashi nan wajen.
All right, let's see what you make of that. Daniel Rega says Muslims make up the majority in Maiduguri, Borno State, and we are still in the month of Ramadan. Now, on Monday at around 7 p.m., there were bomb attacks in 4 strategic places that has reportedly claimed lives and caused panic. Remember this when you want to downplay the seriousness of the insecurity crisis by making it about religion. Now, that said, despite these continuous barbaric attacks, the government will still carries on with the radicalizing of terrorists through the Operation Safe Corridor. Tell me how that program sends any message or gets justice for the victims of the terrorists. You see our problem? Endless. Another user, Abubakar, says these bandits kidnapped people in Ramadan. They killed people in Ramadan. They stormed mosque, kidnapped Muslims praying Taraweeh, and showed no fear of Allah. Even when you beg them, Allah, your situation only becomes worse. But this evil did not appear from nowhere. It is a product of years of failed parenting and a completely broken family system in some of our communities. How do 18, 19, and 20-year-olds disappear into forests to become bandits and terrorists while their parents sit back and claim ignorance? Where were the fathers? Where were the mothers? Where was the discipline? I mean, I've not seen a reaction like this to stories like this before. Blitzreal says victims get graves and trauma. Terrorists get rehabilitation and reintegration. De-radicalization might have a place, but when it happens without visible justice or accountability, it sends a terrible message that the people who suffered matter less than the people who terrorized them. And that's exactly why the anger isn't going away. Deayo says Nigeria is bleeding, and the Minister of Defense and National Security Advisor are heading to UK to play the president's backdrop. What a shame. Now, talking about that UK visit, we understand that they are expected, of course, tomorrow in the United Kingdom. His wife and himself, that's Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and his dear wife, Senator Oluremi Tinubu. But they would be leaving Nigeria today for that 2-day state visit. Now, the visit commences on Wednesday, of course, and it will see to the signing of a 746 million euro financing deal between UK Export Finance and the Nigerian Ports Authority to support the refurbishment of Lagos Port Complex and Tinkan Island Port in Lagos. And this is amongst the several other deals bilateral, of course, expanded to be sealed. And this is according to a statement that was put out yesterday by Bayo Onanuga. So the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, Attorney General Lateef Fagbemi, Minister of Finance, Minister of Defense, National Security Advisor, that's Malam Nuhu Ribado, the DG of National Intelligence Agency, Ambassador Mohammed, and among others, they are amongst those. And this is quite historical. That's why we say, oh, the historical travel, because for 37 years, this has not really happened in Nigeria with any national leader. And that's why it's quite huge, if we have to put it that way, for Nigeria. And yes, one person is also traveling, and you will see that as a reaction to this. It sounds like or feels like welcome to the party sort of trip. But then let's just have, because we've seen that the streets of Windsor Castle has been decorated since the weekend, and how it has all been going there in anticipation of his visit.
Yeah, so I had a slightly different take. I think that the Americans have misread the Iranian people, because, the general belief is that 80% of them want to get rid of the regime, which might be true, but the option they're being offered is also a massive war.
There you went with the trending video from the weekend right there. Let's now see what you make of this. King Mueller says Thank God for my glasses. I have 4 eyes this morning. It says this one wants to go and embarrass us again, and is closing his eyes in shame. Born to Rule says, why can't you stay in Nigeria for 5 months without going outside Nigeria, Mr. President? And he done says, bomb blast for the citizens, English breakfast for Bola Tinubu. He couldn't care less, even if the same people praising and defending him were the ones killed, it still wouldn't move him. Another reaction to this one, Jacob Infinity says, transforming Nigeria through intentional diplomatic engagement. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is 4 + 4 = 8 years of renewed hope and progress. Apparently, Jacob is not in that WhatsApp group that says this is renewed Shege administration. Renewed hope, 8 years. It has to be at least. Let's go. More thoughts to this one. And yes, the governor, Dauda Lawal of Zamfara State. This user says, we understand why he changed allegiance now, just because of a mere stage trip to England. And I remember that just before his defection, say like 3 weeks before then, that interview, I would always refer to it, where he was speaking in Hausa, saying that governors who were defecting were getting like 500 billion naira welcome to the party bonus. And since he assumed office in 2023, he had not gotten anything. And that's because he was in the opposition political party. But now he's there. And yeah, cool, Katuka is saying now that he understands that he had to defect, at least for the benefits. And I'm hoping that he has also received his 500 billion naira welcome, as he alleged in that video. But let's move away from that. We have more stories on the space of the internet this morning. All right, this is a video circulating made by Travel and Tour on the space of social media, and it's said to be an hotel by the Minister of Works, that's Dave Umahi, just one of them, that he has this across state in the southeast about all the states, as they say, but this is a new one, and the drone shots was trending. Community Notes had to put it there as one of the biggest stories on the space of internet this morning. So where is this, and what do you make of this? Do you think this is his money as a billionaire at 25? Or a professor of engineer, or as what? Let's see your thought at this point. Like, it looks like a video without end. Enugu loudspeaker says, one in Abakaliki, one in Port Harcourt. Now, the Enugu one is almost complete. My people, take a good look at Dave Umahi's hotel in Enugu. He also has one in Eboyi and PH, that's Port Harcourt. Seymour says, do you guys even know that Engineer Dave Umahi was a billionaire? Before he even became a governor, who God has blessed, no man can curse. And Dotson says, okay, but why he no build them since? He had to wait till he was Minister of Works? Question. In another thought, Chikwere says, Igbos have one problem: too loud and can't keep things discreet. First of all, Dave is a federal minister and has a construction company which just delivered one of the best roads in Aba. I mean, I was reading 50 billion naira was the contract. Can he afford to build this? Absolutely yes. So what's the deal with these folks? And Malaki Odu says, part of the Coastal Road money is buried here. And for Alex, he says, I hope he flees Nigeria before a new government comes into office, because he will surely do jail like Malami. His case will be worse. Well, you have to prove that that money is coming from the Coastal Road right there. Away from that, we have more stories on the space of internet, and it looks like there is a new support group for the president right now, because yesterday ECO 57 trended all day and still trending up until this morning. But this video from that meeting, a support group ECO 57 seems to be what's trending from that conversation, and that's because she's saying, in fact, I was seeing her for the first time yesterday, that she is a Nollywood actress, Remi Suruku, that she's saying that whatever you have to say about me, whatever you have to do about me, forget it. I'm going to be supporting the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and that's on period. If you feel like he's not doing enough, you have to produce somebody from your own family to govern the country for at least a day and see the difference they can make. And also, he's saying that the fuel prices can never be the business or the problems of the President Bola Tinubu, as world leaders are responsible for the problems we have in Nigeria. Let's hear her.
They are good people. The wife, the husband, the children, they are good people. But the fact that we Yorubas, we don't love ourselves. We condemn ourselves in as much as is allowed. But if we can for one day relax and just think around, look at what is happening all over the world. We are still enjoying ourselves. Like I fought with somebody who was saying, the price of the fuel is decided by some beings, by the world leaders. President our world leaders don't decide but people don't understand. Don't let anybody deceive you. Don't let anybody scare you. When I met Tinubu, our Baba, he's doing well. If you think he has not done well, suggest a man in your family. Let that person come and govern for just one day. Then you will know what is going on.
All right, begin to prepare someone from your family to represent or govern us, preside over Nigeria for a day. Mr. Ola says, vote who you like. Stop trying to blackmail people emotionally. I'm sure you are not buying fuel cheap. Neither are you buying foodstuff cheap. I hope you won't come to the public tomorrow to ask for help when your health is failing. This user, Oluwa Sogo, says, this is one of our major problems in Nigeria. When one person is singled out for a stipend benefit, they deliberately ignore what others are feeling and how the country should be working. Are these your role models? Poor people. The Big Toner says everyone has the right to support whoever they want, but results matter more than words. Let's judge by what people can see and feel in their pockets, not just speeches and things on paper only, big English. Slim Joe says, and everybody go they shout, I have the best mom up and down. Which person, mama, can't be this one? Well, that's just somebody's best mom right there. Well, another story has it that coming from Lagos. I mean, this is dark-skinned Erla on the space of social media. And one thing that brought her to fame is creating content and the trauma people go through in Lagos State, at least in our area, finding buses to work, even if they wake up as early and get to park as early as 5:30 a.m. Well, she's stranded. We had people against her. We've highlighted on Kakaaki Social many times. But then the Lagos State government finally responded, and one day last week, I think it was on Wednesday or so, they put out buses in their numbers, and there were no passengers who were stranded or running late for work. But it seems like it was just use this our old body, calm the tension, and we're coming back to it, because this is a video from yesterday and she feels like we've been fooled. That was just deceptive, because her experience right here is that no buses, hours after, you are still there. Let's have Ella with the sound.
And right now, the time is currently 6:30 a.m. We're in this same situation. No bus. We actually thought this change was permanent. What happened? Why is there no bus? What happened? What happened? Why is there no bus? Excuse me, sir. I thought this change was permanent. We came here early in the morning again, no bus. So on Thursday and Friday, it was just for face. Is that what it is? Just one bus that is here. Just one bus out of the whole crowd. What happened, sir? You told us you would provide buses for us. So what happened? This is Monday morning and there is no bus. What happened? Why is there no bus? Why? I actually believe that this change will stay permanent. That's why I came here right now. I came here live at Elepe to confirm myself. And now there is no bus. Why? Is this what will keep happening?
All right, let's cross over to the comment section and see what you make of this deception, as Ella will put it. The Diary of Freshness says, Nigeria does not solve problems. It manages the visibility of problems until the visibility moves on. Sounds like don't leave me there. Also coming from the space of X is another user who was also posted in reaction to this. And if we could see more thoughts to this, Blinks is saying that until there is sustained pressure, not just one creator going viral every few months, major new investment in buses, fleet size, route protection from downfall, Korokwe encroachment, and the actual performance-linked contracts for operators, the circle will almost certainly continue. And King Aladis says, Elekwe is an alternate stop or park for BRT. This lady can make the people there suffer for her action, because the government can tell the drivers to only pick people at designated terminals for BRT, which is Ikorodu Garage. She and everyone else will have to take a bus to garage first before they can board the BRT. For greatness, it says, I told you guys, they pulled the bus from somewhere just to let you guys calm down for now. Nigeria government don't solve problems. They only take advantage of viral stories. All right. Those are the reactions and the comment coming in from the space of social media right there. Thanks a bunch for being there and doing your Tuesday morning with me. I'm Rena Obio on social media, and we are AIT_online. The program will continue after now, and you and I will always see the next day, so I'll see you tomorrow.
But I don't give you better update. Say if you pay with smart cards, they don't go knock you any charges, not be touch at all.
Which kind of yes smart card? If they no charge you, make them carry me go where I know.
No matter the transaction, Smart Cash no go charge you shishi. Whether na airtime or na data you buy, or you want pay for your light or na cable bill, na zero charges for Smart Cash. This one no be cho. Work is day. Make yourself download Smart Cash app, sharp.
Kakaaki, unwrap joy, unleash taste.
For years, OPay has protected how the people pay. Every day, we move money to keep life going. Through our daily hustle of trying to make ends meet. Through the responsibilities we carry. And when the day's done, we rest easy because we've got extra cover. And because we're confident in the security we've built, we're backing it. Introducing Extra Cover, an extra layer of assurance on your OPay account. So you can send, pay, save, and move through life with peace of mind. Backed up to 5 million naira. The People's Payment Shield, now with Extra Cover.
But I don't give you better update. Say if you pay with smart cash, they don't go knock you any.
Focus Nigeria. It's a huge task, but we take it on.
Asking where is the law? National Assembly is not doing hearing on security in Nigeria. It is America that is doing hearing on the security in Nigeria.
Monday to Friday on Focus Nigeria, we identify the nagging issues.
So people put people in poverty deliberately, deliberate misplacement of priorities, and brought people on their knees to suffer.
We seek answers to the tough challenges.
And because of
for the former president, what I know is that he has not turned his membership card. He has not been attending your meeting.
Leave that to us to deal.
There's no shying away from the issues.
The system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage.
No sitting on the fence.
The same thing that made you live where you are may confront you.
Focus Nigeria, 10 a.m., Monday to Friday on AIT.
Kakaaki, the African voice there, and I hope you enjoyed our social media, corner there with Kakaaki Social, and the one on the whole BRT issue. I'm very sad that, praise them for reactive, activities, but, hopefully they will bring back the buses. And just a quick comment, from a viewer on YouTube talked about how nobody in Abuja has done that on public transportation, and hopefully, we'll get that as well.
Well, it's 12 months to election. We'll see how that will be part of somebody's campaign.
Probably.
All right, we go straight into the next conversation. We're talking about security in Ondo State. Our guest is joining us virtually at Debowale Lawal, Commissioner of Police, Ondo State, is joining us virtually. Good morning.
Good morning, madam.
Thank you, Commissioner, for joining us this morning. So let's begin with the controversy, surrounding the said arrest of a number of bandits around Akure Airport, which the police and also FAN have conflicting accounts of what happened or not. So can we get your take on that issue?
Well, first and foremost, let me quickly correct that impression. We don't have bandits in Ondo State.
Okay.
We don't have bandits in Ondo State. I've said this severally. What happened, we arrested some criminals around within the Obaili Axis. But unfortunately, when they were leading us to where to arrest some of their gang members at Iluabo, there was this, immediately the cited police, they fled, and that was misconstrued with this information flying up and down. So there was nothing like banditry, invasion, those, at the airports in Akure. And that was their bandits. Were bandits in the industry. So we don't have bandits. I don't have any invasion at the airport in Akure.
All right. I mean, this goes to the management of information from the airport authorities, and issues of security can be quite, there, especially when the information gets to the public first before security agencies like yours. So one would say the communication gap, do you think it exists? Can it be better?
Yeah, we met with the management of the Akure airports, and we're able to sort that one out. I would advise them accordingly that their public relations officers should be able to know how to manage information rather than eating up the policy. It was unnecessary. It was unnecessary for them to have done that, and I think they will do the right thing.
All right, let's move to this, all-important question, Chicks. This was some of the things you brought up during the introduction, that there has been, maybe you would confirm this, a recent upsurge in insecurity, especially in violent attacks in Ondo State, your state. Now, what is the cause of this, and what shape and dimension are these violent attacks?
Yeah, thank you. It's when you talk about upsurge in crime incidents in those states, I don't want to agree with that, because in the recent time, the last 2-3 weeks, we had some issues where, one, at Ogbese precisely, a friend called out his friend, one of his friends, in the night that should come out to go to camp. Unfortunately, by the time the friend came out, shortly thereafter, the friend called him, ran down to the community and said they were attacked, only for us to get there, and they saw his lifeless body. So that all could not be attributed to any other thing. It should have been conspiracy between the friend and maybe the assailants of the deceased. Again, the issue at Agamo, His Excellency, Honorable Dr. Lucky Olusai Datiwa, make that clarification, and we are investigating that. The KBC's assailants came armed and marched. So that one couldn't have been said to be maybe upsurge. There are cases, isolated cases. But that notwithstanding, we know we have crimes like criminalities, just like every other place. But we are working on it.
Okay. All right. So how prepared and equipped are your men in Ondo State to handle, whatever issues or concerns the governor is raising?
Oh, we've been acting swiftly. Like the one that I just mentioned, this one that is controversial, misinformation, and so on and so forth. Immediately we received information. Yes, like that was what led to the arrest of two of those, logistic suppliers, those kidnappers. And it was in a bid to arrest others that those people fled and people started going up and down that information of there was an invasion at the airport. Then again, the woman kidnapped at Iluabo, we've arrested our assailants, she confirmed it. Not only that, another kidnapped suspect was arrested. He escaped since August. We also arrested him lately, last week here. So we are prepared. And again, don't forget, we have this robust synergy, collaboration, cooperation with other sister agencies and the non-state actors. We've been working together. And together we move in if there are issues to handle, to deal with.
All right, so now, I hear you loud and clear, but how ready are you to take up challenges when they emerge? Because again, insecurity is very dynamic, and for state, it's also very dynamic because there are border states to Ondo State. So
especially with response.
Yes, with response.
Yeah, thank you. If you look at our border, we share boundaries with Kogi, Ekiti, Edo, Osun. We have our men posted, deployed there, manage those border points. So we are prepared. The military as well, we are lucky in those states, all the security agencies work together. We have that, we believe we have a common purpose, and that is to protect lives and property, ensure that there is peace and stability in those states. So we work together, we man our border points as much as we can. And it is working for us. And we have the intelligence department too. The state intelligence department, they equally gather intelligence, just like the DSS share their intelligence with us too. Just this morning I received one from them, which we appreciate. So we are prepared.
All right.
And that is why we've not had any caution from those other points, because they are well manned.
All right, so I'm asking you this preparedness and preparation because of the show of force that happened in the state yesterday, with the lineup of the different security agencies giving marching orders that there is no safe haven for bandits or terrorists in the state. What does that then do for the state post that show of force? What's the next level of plans?
We've shown the good people from those states that we are prepared, we've occupied the space, and to further convince them the more that we work together, there is unity between all the sister agencies. Now we are going to go to another level, which of course, for various reasons that we want to disclose. But be assured that it's going to be a continuous exercise. We are going around the highway. Maybe the next is to go inside, we shall do bush community. Of course, we have been doing that, but to go further and to let people know that we are prepared for the upcoming festivities too.
Okay. All right. So the synergy between other security, forces in Ondo State, how is that like at the moment for you?
I want to tell you for free that we have a very robust synergy. I can see it for yourself yesterday. We have the military, we have the civil defense, we have the DSS, we have the police, we have the Amotekun. If there was no unity, we wouldn't have been able to do that, packing that together.
All right. I hear you. Let's focus on the regional security network, Amoteco now, for instance. Is the core being coordinated by the Ondo State government or the all Southwest states, which has Amoteco, of course, was originally conceived to be? Is it a state regional security network, or is it the states?
Just like Nigerian police, the federal controls at the federal level. The police is controlled at the federal level. So Amoteco, is an offshoot of the Western Nigeria security outfit. So that is one of the outfits so that is the Ondo State chapter of the Amoteco, the Western Nigeria security outfit. So we have their own, so it's more of the one for the states. Just like Osun State has its own, Ogun State has its own, but that of the one in the states is being controlled by the state governments under the umbrella of Western Nigeria security outfits.
Okay. All right, now looking at what the Ondo State is doing with, Amoteco as well, should other states, try to replicate that, considering that, issues are springing up, in different parts of the Southwest as well?
Of course, when you talk about this issue of Amoteco, the police, embraces and encourages community policing. So they are more of the local police, the state police. So that's it. So all the other states should embrace it, because it goes a long way to complement our efforts. We can't do it alone. The Nigerian police cannot do it alone. So we need others to join us and fight crimes and criminalities in our various state commands. It's a collective responsibility of all of us to ensure that our states are peaceful, we have stability, so that the good people of those states can carry out their business activities, various activities, without any form of molestation, intimidation, and of fear. And with that, investors will come in.
All right, so a lot of the traction, especially in the movement of, the bad guys and the bandits, seems like some of these bandits are moving towards the south, southwards and upwards. One would ask, why has that become so obvious? Secondly, is the fact that community vigilance is so important in this dynamics. How are you working together with the community for intel vigilance and also, preparation in information management?
Thank you very much. You see, we have this community engagement. Just last weekend, we had an agreement with the youth, community leaders, market leaders of some communities, and we told them. So this is something we have been doing. We've been doing it on a regular basis. Because they are the ones on ground. They are the ones going to the farm. They are the ones going to the market. So they know themselves. So once they see any strange face, they call us. And that was what played out 2 days ago, when those two logistics suppliers were arrested, because the farmers saw them, because of the engagements we giving them, and I'm happy it's using dividends. And I was arrested at Iloabo too, because they cited and this one was a straight face, and we were able to arrest him, and we're profiling them.
Okay. All right, now I'd like to know, the police, Amoteco, is there a laid out rule or target, in terms of, this is what the police is going to focus on, this is what Amoteco is going to focus on, or we both do it together so as to avoid, one encroaching into the other's, area of expertise and all of that? Is there something like that, or we work hand in hand?
We have that mutual understanding, respect, and trust for each other. We've had occasions where Amoteco arrested some criminals and they handed over to us. Was to let them know that criminal you have arrested is on our watch list. They hand over to us. So there is that mutual respect, trust, and understanding between us. So there is no rivalry. In fact, in fighting crime, there shouldn't be any rivalry. So they know their limits. And they give it to us, they respect us, much as we respect them too. Because respect is reciprocal. So they know their limits, and we are working together. Because the goal is, Ondo State should be peaceful. So when they make it, they let us know. I can give instances. There was a wanted, this cast marshal or whatever that we are looking to receiver. It was in their custody. And immediately we got wind of that. I called the corps commander of Amotepo. I handed him over to us and several others like that. In fact, as a matter of fact, the last 2 weekends, the police, the Amotepo, and other assist agencies, we carried out raid in hideouts where we were in the state, where we arrested about 99 suspects. And they handed over to police because they know Nigerian police is the lead agency when it comes to internal security. They handed over to us. So to show that the police, the Amotepo, and other non-state actors, and conventional security agencies are working together.
All right. Now, talking about working together, strategy is everything, somebody would say, for the police force, for security agencies right now in fighting insecurity in Nigeria, particularly in generally winning the war against these violent criminals. So going ahead, I know that short of not giving us any security information because we're on live TV, I mean, what other strategy will you be coming up in terms of engaging actively citizens? Because one thing I do know, and we've seen from research, is that, you know, when these bandits, you know, come into any state, they mix up with citizens, they mix up with the community. Some of them are even, you know, they're giving food by restaurateurs who are within the community, you know. So how do you perhaps want to engage further in your next strategy in having community vigilance as part of your key core components?
Thank you so much. You see, the state government has directed all the local government chairmen to activate vigilance activities in their various areas, local government areas. And they are doing that. And like I said, we engage the community and we let them know that there is a possibility of having moles in themselves. These two, they should do more of intelligent gathering and give us feedback. So once they give us, that person, I prefer that person. And like I said, it's paying off. It's paying off. Because we know in every society, there's always the one bad egg or some bad eggs. And communities being an integral part of the society, the state, they just have to be at alert and live up to their responsibilities as well. As a matter of fact, I agree with you. Even the farmers too, we encourage them to give us information and we treat it absolutely confidentially. Give us information about what is happening in the farm, and they are giving us too. Then again, we ask about a follow-up, what we do. There are some steps we are going to take that are not ready to divulge yet, but as it unfolds, we get to know.
Okay. All right. So as we wrap up, things, I'd just like to know quickly, how confident are the people of Ondo State in terms of interacting with the police, with information? How confident are they about their safety as well when they have information about these individuals? And your final words to the people of Ondo State and Nigerians as well.
Well, thank you. I'm going to say this, that the Ondo State group people, they've tested us, they've trusted us, and they've accepted us. And that is why you can see that Ondo State is one of the safest states in Nigeria. And I want to humbly request that they continue to support us with prayers, credible and actionable information, so that we can do the good work we are doing in those states.
All right, thank you.
We appreciate them. We appreciate them so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner of Police Ondo State Adebowale Lawal, for joining us this morning.
Have a lovely day.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, it's now time for us to go to Global Agenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll be our next segment.
Hello and welcome to Global Agenda. I am Ukemere Tokwa, and it's a pleasure to be your host. I had the pleasure of having a chat with the EU ambassador to Nigeria and ECOWAS, Mignot Goethe, on the bilateral relations between Nigeria and the EU, its focus, its projects and perspectives for 2026 and the 2030 agenda.
What is the state of the EU-Nigeria partnership, especially right now, given the
level? It is now in a good phase, growing, being reinforced, and this is really what we want to do in 2026. And we think it's very important for both sides, because the geopolitical context shows us that we need to either look for new partnerships or reinforce existing ones, because we all need reliable partners, constant partners we know we can count on. And this is what the EU is for Nigeria, what we feel also that Nigeria is for us. And so we should engage more forcefully, particularly politically, at top level. And if you look at bilateral political visits in the last few years, there have been very few. And so we have to relaunch also this effort. And this is what we've been doing already last year. We've been reinforcing or launching sectorial dialogues, like in trade and investment, where there was a big paradox. We are proudly Nigeria's first partner in trade, first provider of investment stock. And though we have no framework, no legal framework, no dialogue, no regular dialogue. And so this is what we created last year. And we are continuing now with working groups in trade and investment to go deeper into this dialogue and to see how we can foster more trade and investment between the EU and Nigeria. And this we have done also in another very important sector, which is peace, security and defense. Again, a sector where we have done a lot in the past, but we didn't have a political dialogue. And a few days ago, the National Security Advisor of Nigeria traveled to Brussels to hold the first edition of this dialogue. And there is a very important aspect in that, which is respect for sovereignty. We insist very much in our relationship with our partners, in particular in Africa, that we respect their sovereignty. And I think that it's also a value added in today's geopolitical context.
Nigeria, as you know, has a number of partners across the globe and in the continent. What exactly is the added value that the EU's partnership will bring to Nigeria?
Well, we know that indeed Nigeria has many partners, try also, like we are doing, to diversify its partnerships, and this is normal, but we think that our offer has really specificities compared with others. Perhaps the main one is that we are neighbors, our destinies are intertwined. If Nigeria, if West Africa is doing well, it will have positive repercussions on us, and the other way around. And if Europe is now doing well, it will also have negative implications for Africa. And so our first objective, our first interest in this partnership is for Nigeria to do well, is for Nigeria to be an anchor of stability and democracy in West Africa. So it's not so much about, making profits, economic gains, like perhaps others are rather aiming at. Of course, it's a dimension of our interests, but our main interest is geopolitical. And then I think we offer also a top quality partnership. When it comes to infrastructure, for instance, what we finance is really a top-notch infrastructure. What we offer is always technical assistance for good public policies. Again, state of the art. And this is not what all other partners offer. We also have a diversity of financial instruments, financial engineering now through the Global Gateway, which I think is second to none. So we have a focus on access to finance, which we know is a bottleneck always. But to have a tailor-made offer in terms of financing to best respond to our partners' needs. And then we are also leaders in sustainable and green transition. And so this sustainability aspect, I think, is also really a characteristic of the EU offer. It is present all across our cooperation projects. And finally, women and youth is also a cross-cutting dimension. 85% of our projects globally must have at least a gender dimension or gender as a main purpose. And here in Africa, youth is another cross-cutting priority. So every time we design and implement a project, we take into account this question, how it will benefit specifically women and youth. So a lot of characteristics that really make the EU offer special for Nigeria and Africa.
So for the green economy and digital transformation, how exactly will that support Nigeria given all the changes happening in Nigeria at the moment?
Well, green economy is of course about circular economy, but it's also about climate smart agri-food, about sustainable transportation, for instance. So let me give you perhaps a few examples of what we're trying to do. On climate smart agriculture, what we try to do is reinforce value chains in sectors like cocoa, like dairy, like tomato, ginger, maize. So a few sectors where we see specific potential and a transformative potential. And this is through a project where we partner with Germany in particular, and it's implemented by the GIZ, the German Development Agency. On transportation, we have a big project in Lagos of electric waterways transportation for passengers called the Omi-Eco project. 360 million euros investment from the European Union, the EIB, the European Investment Bank, and France, together with the Lagos state government, to provide in a few years a transportation system of electric ferries, some 70 or 75 electric ferries across the lagoon of Lagos, connected with the terrestrial transportation system to facilitate movements across the metropolis, and also to better connect some areas of the city which are now very remote areas. And then on renewables, we are working very much, we've worked in the past very much on regulation. For instance, today, if Nigeria is growing so much on solar energy, it's partly because during years, the EU has helped Nigeria to build a regulation framework very solid, which is now in place. And now we focus efforts especially on small hydro and small solar plants, in many cases off-grid. So not gigantic projects, but projects which are also adapted to the situation in Nigeria, where the grid is still to be reinforced, I would say. And we try to meet local needs, but also partnering with state governments, which have a very important role to play now.
Thank you so much for that. In commemoration of the partnership, it's evident that you should have tasted Nigerian food. So I'm going to ask the million-dollar question. What is your favorite meal?
Well, actually, I like much to taste Nigerian food, especially when I travel around the country. I like very much spicy food, so that's a chance when you come to Nigeria, because if you don't, then I think you have an issue. But I like it very much. I like simply jollof rice, egusi soup. I'll love to have egg sauce for breakfast, for instance. Voilà, moi moi.
Okay.
Very good.
I think you've got it on lockdown. You've mentioned all the top key foods so far.
Thank you so much for staying tuned to Global Agenda. Join me next week as we continue on this conversation.
Welcome back from Global Agenda, and I hope you had an amazing one there. We've come to the end of another edition of Kakaaki, and thank you so much for being there. It's been fun-filled.
Absolutely. I know as in the United Kingdom, whether this visit will be a jamboree or it will be policy statement reading. We'll see for ourselves in the forthcoming days.
Yeah, and I hope it's the second part of your statement as well. My name is Chukwuyenum Onwuka.
I am Adora Sydney Jack. Goodbye for now.
AIT, sharing the African experience.
My name is Moa. Remember it? You are.
She's stuck.
Over here. This is a secret between the four of us. The fried cake is so yummy. Wow! Moa did it! I'm in so much. For Double Night Festival homework, I'm gonna beat you. If your legs are starting to hurt, you should have a foot bath.